Hi everybody, my name is Donnelly and I'm going to talk today about aspirational characteristics for effective team leadership or membership. These are items that I've either learned about or read about through experience or various sources, and there's 8 of them that we're going to discuss today and move through and talk about each of those. So aspirational characteristics for effective team leadership or membership. These are things that can help you either lead quality improvement teams, really any type of team that you're either leading or a member of. And again, there are 8 of these things, and we're going to just move through and talk about each of them. Number 1 is respect for people and being a good listener. All of us have had encounters or known people where you leave the interaction with a very bad feeling about it. The first characteristic is respect for people, being a good listener. We've all had interactions with people where we leave that interaction not feeling very good about it. And we all know people who make us feel like they're very good listeners and listen to us as we talk with them. Some of the things that you can do to do this are leading by asking questions and seeking first to understand where the people are coming from. This helps you demonstrate empathy for the people and helps you build trust. I think in modern current times, one of the things that disrupts people thinking that you're a good listener, maybe more than anything else, is use of the cell phone. So you can be talking with someone, and one of the things that you can do to make them feel like you're not listening to them is pull your cell phone out and start looking at it. We've all been at meetings where everyone, it seems like, that's sitting at the meeting are all looking at their phones, and it's often the thought of why are we having this meeting that people can't possibly pay attention both to the meeting and to their cell phones at the same time. Prior coming to this organization, I actually worked at another organization where they had 10 principles which by they held everybody accountable as far as their behavioral interactions. These 10 principles were based on a book called Accountability Now, written by a gentleman named Mark Sasser. And there were many benefits to holding everybody to the same behavioral principles. There were also some problems with that. But the one I wanted to talk about here was the expectation number 1 was be in the moment. And this basically was code for that it was very impolite to look at your cell phones during interactions or in meetings. And that was a red flag to people, so it was very interesting to watch new people to the organization that were not part of that culture, and it was actually, I think, one of the very good things about those principles. So again, being a good listener is really the foundation really for all the other principles or characteristics that we'll talk about. The second characteristic is effective communication around the accountability cycle. And by this, some of the things that you can do are setting very specific expectations when you're leading a group, focusing on follow-up, auditing, having visual boards with the data or at least a way to track the things that are involved in the project. Those will help you very much move those projects on to fruition. Obviously, when possible, having data around the decisions and verifying those decisions, having the fortitude to provide honest critical feedback when things don't go well, but at the same time balancing that with always remembering to have more positive than negative feedback. Experts talk about you need to have a 4-to-1 ratio between positive and negative feedback. I find that giving out awards to the team members helps. Trophies, other little things can mean an awful lot to people when they're working hard on various things. Characteristic number 3, simplicity, prioritization, and pace. We all have been in situations where someone offers a solution to a particular problem and you just go, that is not going to work, and usually because it's too complicated. We work in very complicated systems, and we want to avoid the desire to oversimplify things, but at the same time, our solutions in these complex systems have to be the most practical and in that sense the most simple. I'm not a religious person, but I am a big fan of the Serenity Prayer, which is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The people who do that well are the ones that are successful. Aspirational characteristic number 4, expend energy in a way to optimize people development. And for me personally, this is one of the more difficult ones. It is your energy that people care about, not your time. You can spend an hour with somebody in your office and have them walk away not feeling like you're very invested in their career, and you can spend a 5-minute hallway conversation with somebody and have them walk away feeling very good about that interaction. Characteristic number 4, expend energy in a way to optimize people development. This is a very difficult one for me personally. I'm a bit introverted and much rather be in my office working on things than interacting with people, but it's very important to do so. So it is your expended energy, not your time, that people really care about. You can spend an hour with somebody in a meeting in your office and have them walk away feeling that you're not very invested in them. And at the same time, you can spend 5 minutes with somebody in a hallway conversation and have them walk away feeling that you are very invested. So it's the relationship over task orientation, spending time with people. For people who are very busy, some of the things that helps with this is rounding, daily huddles. Those are mechanisms to get those things on your schedule so you can actually spend more time with people and spend time leading from the workplace. This is all about mentorship. Teaching and coaching is one of the foundations of being a good leader, or for that matter, a good team member. Characteristic number 5, leading with optimism. Another way to say that is exuding positivity. We've probably all been in situations where you have a leader that is very negative, and there's nothing more that can bring down the morale of an area than that. So some of the things that leaders can do, if you bring the mission of your organization to the workplace and share that vision, that is always very helpful in creating that spirit of positivity, always considering the greater organization in your decision making, and aspiring for excellence. And in particular for us, inspiring for excellence in clinical care, research, and education. If you come at things from with that as the base of where you're coming from, you're leading with optimism, and people are going to be receptive. I don't know if people have seen the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's this documentary. It's about an hour long, and it's about a guy who spent his whole life making sushi. But one of the quotes from that he says is, you should always try to improve, and you should always try to elevate your craft. And if we can create an atmosphere where people feel that way about their roles at work, they're going to do an outstanding job, and you're going to have a great organization. Characteristic number 6, create a culture of self-improvement, wellness, and sustainability. This is something that we often don't think about as leaders, but it is very important. I used to live in Florida, and right outside of my neighborhood was this building called the Human Performance Institute, and it was originally an organization that dealt with professional athletes, teaching them little nuances to help them improve their craft. It was then purchased by Johnson & Johnson, and now is an executive coaching facility as well. But a couple things that they talk about that I think are very useful is they say that stress is good when paired with appropriate recovery. We all know those things as far as exercise and things like that, but it's also true for leadership and for your career. And they also say that you should see your career as a series of sprints, not a marathon. That you should work hard, recover, work hard, recover. So that's another thing that I think is an important concept for leaders. Characteristic number 7 is a progressive attitude towards failure. Now, failure, we all view this as profoundly negative. We're usually naturally ashamed of our failures, and there's reason for that. If you look at us as a community, we're very quick to blame others when problems occur, so it's natural that we may feel a bit of shame related to failures. Also, when people are confronted about their very deeply held beliefs, they usually don't believe that information, even if it's obviously true. There are a number of things, cognitive dissonance, narrative fallacy, creating stories to explain it, that they go through. We have to create a culture where the opportunity to learn from our errors is seen to outweigh the reputational damages that are associated with failure. And it has been stated that a progressive attitude towards failure is the key difference between organizations and industries that excel as compared to those that don't. And people have stated the airline industry, which is preoccupied with failure for obvious reasons and has done an outstanding job of eliminating errors and their associated consequences, as compared to medicine, where historically we haven't had such a culture. So we have to see failure as an opportunity to learn and improve, and not as a stigma. Eleanor Roosevelt said, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And I think that's a good quote that summarizes that very well. Finally, characteristic number 8, humility over arrogance. We're basically talking about principles here, and the definition of a principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior, or for a chain of reasoning. And I was reading recently a Rolling Stone interview with Kid Rock, the musician, and he was asked, what is the most important principle by which you live? And his answer was, don't be a dick. Now, this might not sound all that politically correct, and certainly doesn't sound like the most intellectual thing to say, but there is a lot of truth to it. If you look, again, back to humility over arrogance, humility enables learning, improvement, and the development of team, and arrogance disables learning, improvement, and the development of team. It only takes one disruptive, arrogant person in a team to disrupt that whole process. And this is actually now a proven fact. There was a publication that came out in the journal Pediatrics in 2015, which was entitled "The Impact of Rudeness on Medical Team Performance, a Randomized Trial." They actually took different teams of people and deposited rude, disruptive people into certain teams, and not surprisingly, those teams performed much less well and had way more errors than the other teams. So again, always trying to show humility and demonstrate that over arrogance is a very important thing. One last thing as it pertains to the last characteristic, and this is how does human performance work? We all think of human performance as a normal bell-shaped curve. Most people are average. There are some people that perform above average and an equal number of people that perform below average. And we think about this in terms of children, how they perform in the classroom, how we coach our kids. You know, can you get them special training so they do better on that standardized test and move them towards the leftward aspect of the bell-shaped curve? We look at this as far as child athletics is concerned. Are athletics helping our children develop better? And can we get them special coaching to move them again to the excelling side of the bell-shaped curve? But the question is that really true? Is human behavior usually a bell-shaped curve? And in 2012, there was a publication that looked at over 600,000 researchers, entertainers, politicians, and athletes. And what they found was that human performance was not at all a bell-shaped normal distribution, but that most of human accomplishments were made by a very small number of people. So this has some profound implications. First of all, most people are below average because you have that small group of people outperforming everybody else. And some axioms that can come out of that are that much of what is created by humans is accomplished by a small group of super users, and many of these super users are not the greatest family members or co-workers. So if you want a world-class team, some of these more difficult people may be needed to be part of that team, and part of your role as a leader is to set the behavioral standards so that it is clear to them how your expectations are for them to interact with the rest of your team. Thank you very much for your attention.